Hello, I am Pastor Matthew Verhoeg, and this is a commentary of Luke chapter 14, verses 1 to 14. Let's switch on over to commentary mode, and let's see. Verse 1, and it happened, this common transition phrase used by Luke, when he, that is Jesus, came to a house of the leaders of the Pharisees. So we know Jesus has had many run-ins with the Pharisees, and here again we're going to have another one because it is also, Luke loves to remind us at the beginning, on the Sabbath. And so we should have our ears open for a Sabbath controversy to eat bread. And some translations might have just to have a meal. Eating bread signifies it's probably the noonday meal. And they were watching him. So they here is connected to the leaders of the Pharisees. They were watching him. And watching him, if you get vibes of Sting here, I'll be watching you, like kind of creepy, you probably should be, because as we can see that this word watch is paraterumenoi, from paratereo, which is to watch closely or diligently, to keep under observation, watch closely with a malicious intent. And so we see this in Acts 9:24, but their plot became known to Saul. They were watching the gates day and night in order to kill him. So this watching that we see from the Pharisees sets a tension in the story that we should be expecting controversy, and lo and behold, controversy will come soon. Noticing a man who is suffering from dropsy. Dropsy is a term you've probably never heard of, and what it refers to is a condition where someone would be swelling on the inside, and this is the kind of thing that we see someone with congenital heart failure, some sort of heart issues. There's fluids building up in their body. It's very serious. This person might die within short order. It was believed in those days that dropsy was a punishment from God, perhaps for sexual sin. And so the fact that this man with dropsy is in this meal in the house of the Pharisees makes you kind of wonder, and I think almost for sure, that when Jesus notices this man, this guy is there as a setup. The Pharisees have invited this person here to provoke Jesus into healing him so that they would have another reason to dislike Jesus. Verse 3, and Jesus answering. This is kind of a funny. Jesus answers who? He answers who? He answers the watching him here. This answer and watching, because Jesus is answering their thoughts. They put this guy in front of Jesus, see if he would heal, and they're all thinking, oh, what is he going to do? So Jesus answers before they even say a word. And in fact, as we go on, and something important to note in this text is that the Pharisees do not have a word to say to Jesus. So great is Jesus' ability to speak and act that they have no defense. Jesus answering said to the lawyers, that is, lawyers, experts in Mosaic law, and the Pharisees, there's overlap between the Pharisees and lawyers, saying, is it lawful? Literally the word is, do I have leave to heal on the Sabbath? So again, we see Sabbath, which text noted, on the Sabbath, or not. So this is a controversy that has come up a couple of times. And again, Jesus is going to ask them. He wants them to say, no, it's not lawful to do good on the Sabbath, so that they realize the ridiculousness of their position. But they were silent. And we're gonna put silent in red here because we're gonna see that again. And he, so that's Jesus again, taking hold of him. And this is Jesus touched him. Maybe Jesus held on to him. It's taking hold. It's pretty strong language here. Jesus took hold of the sick man with dropsy. Maybe, there was an implication that this man was a sinner, and yet Jesus touches him and he healed him and sent him off. So Jesus, in fact, sends him away from there. And the great irony of this text is this man is basically, he's a pawn in the Pharisees' scheme. And yet God uses all of this in order to save his life, heal him, and so this act where he was just sort of a pawn in the Pharisee schemes ends up being very good for him. Now Jesus is going to show why this is the right thing, and he said, and to them, that is the Pharisees, he said, who of you having a son or a cow? A son, if you're reading the King James, you'll notice son is actually donkey. Well, actually King James, it's ass, ox and ass here, which is the typical King James. But most modern translations have son, and it's a textual issue. The oldest translations, the oldest texts are pretty evenly split between son or donkey. The logic being son is much more likely to be original because son is a weird thing to have here. You would expect donkey and ox, or donkey or cow go together. Cow is what we typically use to refer to a cattle here, and older translations generally use ox, which technically refers to a male cow, usually used for a beast of burden. A cow obviously used for milk. But which of you having a son, so I think it should be translated son, or a cow, into a well falls. And so it into a well, and you do not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day. So we said, and so seal on the Sabbath, and now we have on the Sabbath. And the obvious thing is, if this happened, they had a son, they're going to go and make him whole, bring him out. And yet they want to criticize Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. Jesus reveals their double standard, and they are not able to answer these things. They're not able to answer these things. And so the Pharisees end up being entirely shown how they're wrong by Jesus here, and they are not even able to give him a word. Now, the doing good to another is referenced in this very way, and there's probably a reference here to Deuteronomy 24, and we can see that Deuteronomy 24. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fallen down by the way and ignore them. You shall help him lift them up again. And again, we see they were not able to answer. So they're silent in verse 4, and they're not able to answer these things. And this is what Luke wants us to take away from this text here. That in the face of the truth of Jesus Christ, his opposition was silent. Now, this is going to be in stark contrast to at the crucifixion, at the trial before then, Jesus is going to be silent. So going on to verse 7, and I don't know if I told people this, but this is my own translation here. And starting in verse 7, I do something a little different. I have conjunctions first, and then when I have a line here, this is object, verb, direct object, and then indirect objects I will have on the second line, or participial phrases. I know it's kind of Greek to you, but that's what the language is. It's originally Greek. And I'm hoping that this is a way that if you're following along, it'll better be you will better be able to keep with the flow of thought in the original language. Now, if you want to have open your own translation beside, you can have it'll be generally pretty similar. If you have a very literal translation like the English Standard Version or the New American Standard Version or even the King James Version, although with these and thous. If you have something like the New Living Bible, which is pretty popular, it will sound different because they often will use a variety of phrases to translate one word, and this makes the translation a little more wordy, and it's great for reading. It's good for starting out, for understanding the Bible, but to really get into the language, it's better to use a more literal translation. So if you're interested in stuff like this, you probably want to get a more literal translation. So verse 7 is where there's a shift. And so this is all at a dinner party, and it's actually going to go past 14. And this is a dinner party with Jesus. But now he's going to speak a parable after this opposition where they have this tension. So he speaks a parable, and this is going to be so important to see because parable here means a story that makes a point, but not necessarily like the literal point. It probably is speaking of a deeper reality, and that's going to be important because Jesus is going to say something here that has a very literal reality, but I think he's making a deeper point, so we should watch. So he spoke a parable to those who have been invited. That's who he's speaking to, and he's noticing how he's seeing that they picked out the places of honor. So this is they're all going to be, you see them actually reclining, so they like kind of lay on their sides to eat. And they want to go to the place of honor. So the host would sit on one end of the table, and then the place of honor would be on the left side of him, with the most honorable, the right side, the second most, and so on. And they're picking out the best places because they want to be seen. And this is something so natural to life. We want to, go in the place that's the front row, except if we're at church. Then we go like the sixth row or the back. So he says to them, whenever you are invited to a wedding by someone, do not recline or be seated in the first place or in the most important place, the place of honor, lest someone more important than you might be invited by him. So if someone is more important is invited and then coming to you, the one who invited you and him will say to you, give up this place. And then you will begin with shame to take the last place. So we have the big contrast here between the person who goes to the first place but ends up in the last place. So instead, but whenever you have been invited, go and recline at the last place. Last place, in order that when the one who invited you comes, he will say, friend, move up higher. Then it will be for your glory, literally, or honor here. Glory is when we use this word doxa to speak of God, and honor when we use it to speak of a person. It will be for your glory before all those who are seated around you. Okay, so this is the story, and now we're going to get kind of the point. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. This is the substantive verb here, be. And the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, I think that this is directly speaking to an eschatological framework. So we remember this is, I made a big point, this is a parable. So this isn't just telling you how to, be civil at a dinner party. What this is telling you is that God in the end, when the new kingdom comes, he is going to be the one. He is the one who invites. He is the one who's going to say, friend, move up higher. So it's the person in God's kingdom who seeks to occupy the lowest place, who just sits in a place which is unrecognizable, not trying to exalt himself, is going to be, in the end, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. We want to see this in a eschatological way. And the second reason we're going to see why I think we should translate this in this way. Now, practically, this goes to everything in life, because humbling yourself is a thing. First of all, to humble yourself, to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior. Second, in order to, show honor to people, putting them before yourself, like having this mind which is yours in Christ Jesus, taking the place of a servant. All right, so that's the second part, and we're going to see the continuation of this theme. It's even more clear that we should interpret this as the reality that humbling ourselves now means we will be exalted in the age to come. Verse 12, and he said to the one who invited him, whenever you have a meal or feast, do not call your friends, nor your brothers, nor your relatives, nor rich neighbors, lest also they invite you in return, and it is repayment for you. But whenever you give a banquet, invite the crippled, lame, the poor, crippled, lame, and blind, and you will be blessed, for they do not have the means to repay you. Okay, and this is going to be a parable too. In the last line, we're going to see this. I'll just put it here. It will be repaid to you at the resurrection of the righteous or the just. And here we see that Jesus is really speaking eschatologic. He's speaking of this is going to be the reality in the future when Jesus sets up his kingdom at the resurrection of the just. That's how they talk, the resurrection of the dead, that we will be repaid for how we care for the least of these, and furthermore, how we humble ourselves. Let's look at this verse a little bit, and these verses, and I'm going to bring Calvin in here. This is our Calvin quote of the day. He says in this, to perform any act in the hope of a reward to rich men, from whom we expect a similar return, is not generosity, but a system of commercial exchange. And in like manner, kind offices rendered from mercenary views are of no account in the sight of God, and do not deserve to be ascribed to charity. This is the point making, that we often think ourselves to be generous because we are generous with our friends. We're quick to pay for a meal, invite people over. But if we're doing that to people who are at our same social status, who are going to also invite us in return, if we're only showing kindness, to people who are going to give to us back, this isn't a thing that we should think of as worthy. It's not It's not charity, as Calvin says. Now, I don't think this means that we're never allowed to invite people over. I don't think that's Jesus' point. Jesus' point is that when we do this, don't think of yourself as a generous person when you're doing good to someone who can give you back. When the real kind of charity is when we actually care for people who cannot pay us back. Now, I think it's a little ironic here because if we remember right back at the beginning of the story, Jesus, the Pharisee, had invited a man with dropsy. Now, inadvertently, I think doing something that Jesus is going to commend, although I think they were doing it in order to trap Jesus. This shows that it is so commended by Jesus that we care for the poor and those who cannot actually do good to us. It says, you will be blessed because it will be repaid to us for the resurrection of the just. All right. So, key points here is that these are parables. Both of these are parables that have a significance showing that when we are humble and don't put ourselves in the last place, we will be exalted in the age to come, and when we're doing mercy to another, when we're giving, we should give to those who don't, it doesn't help our social standing, because that's the only giving that's truly giving, because giving and being generous to people who are wealthy, we expect returns, and we often get returns. Thank you. This has been the commentary of Luke chapter 14, verses 1 to 14.